Two men in suits climbed a hill in Brazil, lay down side by side in the grass, covered their eyes with homemade lead masks, and died. No visible injuries. No obvious cause of death. And beside them, a small notebook with handwritten instructions for what appears to be a ritual to contact something that is not human. This case is almost 70 years old, and it has never been solved. This is the lead masks of Vintem Hill. August 20th, 1966. Niterói, Brazil, right across the bay from Rio de Janeiro. A young boy is flying a kite on Vintem Hill, which is just a regular hill on the edge of town. Nothing special about it. People walk through there all the time. The boy spots something in the tall grass and goes to look. And then he runs home, because what he found were two dead men lying on their backs, side by side, wearing formal suits and matching lead masks over their eyes. The men were Manuel Pereira de Cruz, 32, and Miguel José Viana, 34. They were electronic technicians from Campos dos Goitacazes, a city about 180 miles north of Niterói. They were friends. They were colleagues. And 3 days earlier, on August 17th, they had told their families they were going to Niterói to buy supplies for work, specifically a car and some electronic materials. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. And what police found at the scene turned a strange death into one of the most baffling cases in Brazilian history. Let me walk you through exactly what was found next to the bodies, because every single detail matters. First, the lead masks. These were not store-bought. Manuel and Miguel made them by hand from sheet lead, the kind of lead used in electronics work, which they would have had easy access to. The masks were simple, oval pieces shaped to cover the eyes, like a sleep mask made of metal. The obvious question is why? Lead blocks radiation. That is its primary shielding use. Were they expecting to encounter something that emitted radiation? Or light so intense they needed to protect their eyes? Second, there was a small notebook. Inside, handwritten, was a set of instructions. And this is where I need you to pay close attention, because this changes everything about the case. The note read, roughly translated, 1630 be at the agreed place. 1830 swallow capsules, after effects sit waiting for the mask signal. 1630. Be at the agreed place. They had a schedule. 1830. Swallow capsules. Capsules of what? After effect meaning after the capsules take effect, sit waiting for the mask signal. Put on the masks and wait for a signal. A signal from what? From whom? No capsules were found at the scene. No bottle, no packaging. Either someone took them, the capsules dissolved completely, or whatever they swallowed was consumed entirely. Toxicology was inconclusive because, and this is a critical failure in the case, the autopsies were not performed until the bodies had been unrefrigerated for an extended period. By the time the organs were tested, decomposition had made it impossible to isolate most substances. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, which is medically meaningless. Your heart stops when you die. That is not a cause, it is a description of death itself. Also found at the scene, a handkerchief, a basic water bottle, and 2 towels. The towels were wet. There was no water source nearby. And one more thing. Witnesses in the area reported seeing UFOs, glowing aerial objects over Vintem Hill on the evening of August 17th, multiple independent witnesses. These reports were documented by local newspapers before anyone knew about the dead men. Okay, we're about to go deep into who these men really were, and trust me, their background is the key to this entire case. If this kind of mystery is your thing, the ones that get stranger the more you dig, subscribe to Mind Trap right now. We go places other channels won't. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Now, back to Brazil. Here is what makes this case so unusual. Manuel and Miguel were not naive. They were not troubled. They were not on drugs, at least not that anyone knew of. They were working electronics technicians with families and stable lives. But they had a secret interest that most of their loved ones knew very little about. They were deeply involved in what Brazilians call scientific spiritualism, a blend of spiritism, which is massive in Brazil, and fringe science. Think seances meets amateur radio experiments. They believed it was possible to contact non-human intelligences through a combination of ingested substances and electronic devices. And they were not alone. They were part of an informal group of experimenters who had been conducting these sessions for some time. In the months before their deaths, both men had been buying electronic components that had nothing to do with their day jobs. Capacitors, resistors, specific materials. They were building something, and nobody in their inner circle would say exactly what. Now here is the detail that most English language videos completely miss, because it requires digging into Portuguese language sources. This was not an isolated incident. In 1962, 4 years before Manuel and Miguel died, another electronics technician was found dead on the same hill. Same general area. He was also wearing a lead mask. His name has been largely lost to the public record, but Brazilian investigators confirmed the connection. Same hill. Same mask. Same type of victim. 4 years apart. And there were other incidents in the region during the 1960s involving people connected to the same spiritual scientific circles. People who attempted similar contact experiments and experienced unexplained medical events, severe headaches, temporary blindness, burns with no clear source. Most of these were never formally investigated. They exist in local newspaper archives and personal accounts from family members who spoke to researchers decades later. This was not a one-off event. This was a practice. And it kept going wrong. So what actually killed them? Let me give you the major frameworks. Suicide or ritual gone wrong. The simplest explanation is that the capsules they swallowed were poison, either intentionally or by miscalculation. Maybe they believed the substance would induce a visionary state that would allow them to perceive something. The signal referenced in the notebook and the dose was lethal. This is plausible. It explains the note, the preparation, the schedule. But it does not explain why they were lying so peacefully, side by side, with no signs of distress, no vomiting, no convulsions. People who die of poisoning almost never look like they fell asleep. Murder. Maybe someone gave them poison capsules, convinced them the substance was something else. If Manuel and Miguel were part of a group, there could have been a leader figure who directed the experiment and provided the materials. The absence of capsule containers at the scene supports this. Someone may have cleaned up. But no suspect was ever identified, and no motive was established. The contact experiment actually worked, sort of. This is the one that sounds insane until you sit with the details. The UFO sightings over Vintem Hill that evening were reported independently by multiple people who had no connection to Manuel and Miguel. The lead masks only make functional sense as radiation or intense light shielding. The wet towels, with no water source nearby, could indicate they were used to cool burns or protect skin. And the note after effects sit waiting for the mask signal reads like instructions for an encounter with something that emits dangerous energy. I am not telling you what to believe. I am telling you what the evidence looks like when you lay it all out. Here is a theory that almost nobody discusses. Brazil in the 1960s was in political turmoil. The military had taken power in 1964. Intelligence agencies were actively monitoring and infiltrating civilian groups, especially anything perceived as subversive or countercultural. Spiritist groups that were experimenting with technology and claiming contact with non-human intelligence would have absolutely attracted attention. One Brazilian researcher, a journalist named Carlos Combs, spent years investigating whether Manuel and Miguel's group had been infiltrated by military intelligence, whether the experiment was actually a controlled scenario designed to eliminate people who were getting too close to something they shouldn't have known about, or to test the effects of a substance on willing human subjects who believed they were participating in something spiritual. There is no hard evidence for this theory. But there is a documented pattern in Cold War-era Brazil of intelligence services using exactly these kinds of informal groups as cover for experimentation. And the fact that the case was never seriously pursued by authorities despite being one of the strangest deaths in Brazilian history speaks for itself. The case was never solved. It was never even properly investigated. The botched autopsy guaranteed that we would never know what was in those capsules. The notebook instructions were never decoded beyond their surface meaning. The 1962 case was never formally linked. The UFO reports were filed and forgotten. Manuel Pereira de Cruz left behind a wife and children. So did Miguel José Viana. Their families spent decades asking the same questions we are asking now, and they never got answers either. What we know is this: two intelligent, rational men believed they were going to make contact with something. They prepared carefully. They followed a protocol. They built protective equipment. They ingested a substance on a schedule. And then they died, lying peacefully side by side on a hilltop while something or nothing glowed in the sky above them. Either they were deluded, and their delusion killed them. Or they weren't. I need to hear your take on this one. Poisoning? Murder? A government operation disguised as a spiritual experiment? Or do you think Manuel and Miguel actually found what they were looking for and it killed them? Tell me in the comments. And if you speak Portuguese and have access to sources on this case that I haven't covered, I genuinely want to hear about it. This one goes deeper than most people realize. I'll see you in the next one. Estimated runtime, 12 to 14 minutes at natural speaking pace. SEO title suggestion, The Lead Masks of Vintem Hill, Brazil's most disturbing unsolved mystery tags. Lead Masks, Vintem Hill, Unsolved Mysteries, Brazil Mystery, Lead Masks Case, Niterói, Mine Trap, True Mystery, Unexplained Deaths.